All right, I keep getting ahead of myself. First thing we're going to need to do is get rid of this pilot bushing. And in order to do that, I have this awesome tool here, which threads in. And then you can use a grease gun to attach to the end of the fitting. And then it pumps grease in and pushes the bearing out. Get hydraulic pressure in it and it just pops right out. Stay stuck to these threads. Some people have, the bread method, wet paper towels, whatever. I'm actually really fond of this. It's worked really well for me in the past, especially on my KA engines. So let's get it. Start the thread just a little, and I'm going to grab a wrench. It doesn't take too many turns. Just enough to make sure it's seated. Makes a good seal. The threads stay in the bearing. There we go. And then attach the grease gun. And we start pumping. I just did that whole process without the camera going. So to show you real quick, I have the tool. There we go. It's threaded into the bearing. Use the grease to pump it in. Grease gun. And without any effort, it just like popped right out. Super, super easy. So I'm going to clean this all up, take this plate off, clean it up, and then maybe we'll actually get to the clutch and flywheel here in a sec. Put some glasses on before we're doing this. All right, let's take a look at our Exedy OEM clutch kit. Woo! For reference, there's the kit number. Got spiders inside. All right, we have instructions, alignment tool. Yeah. That's the clutch disc itself. I did open this already and take a look, make sure everything's good. Clutch disc, throwout bearing, pilot bushing or bearing, ooh, and here is our pressure plate. So I thought I was getting a flywheel with this, but it turns out I did not order one, so I will be reusing the original, which appears to be in really good condition, so let's roll with it. Back under the car. I have my pilot bushing here. I don't know if that's in focus or not. Just gonna get it settled in there, and then we're gonna find something to drive it in with. You might notice this is all cleaned up too. A little bit of oven cleaner goes a long way. This is actually one of my favorite tools. Use this for all kinds of things, like fuel tanks. There we go, make sure that's going in straight. Smooth. It's going in nice and smooth. A few more pops. And we're flush. There we go. There we are. There we go. It's set nicely around the crankshaft there. All that crap just running right off onto my floor. All right, I think I get that about as clean as I can for now. And let's go ahead and get some Loctite on these bolts and get this thing torqued to spec. All right, I got plenty of Loctite on this one. Let's pull this one back out. Share the love. Get that spread between the two of them. So I overdid it on one. Smooth. All right. Now, like most things on cars, you got to do these in crisscross patterns. But I'm just hand tightening for now, and we'll get to the actual torque here in a minute. All right, hand tighten. Now let me see what the service manual says. Oh, that's tough. But service manual says 72 to 80, so I'm starting at 70, and then we'll work it up to 80. Working these in a crisscross. Get myself a workout. I was being coerced into going to the gym earlier, and I think this kind of sets me up. All right, that's 70. Whew. Now it's gonna get harder. Let's turn it up 10 more. Who needs a Bowflex? Is that still a thing? Bam, bam. Oh, all right, that sucked. All right, I've got my clutch disc here on the alignment tool. Get behind the camera so I can see if I'm actually showing you guys. Get the napkin out of my hand. All right, clutch is on the alignment tool. OEM Exedy. Exedy, I don't know how people say it nowadays. There we go. Make sure we're setting in there. We're sitting flat. Looks good and flat on the edges. All right. We're going to go ahead and put this pressure plate back up on the flywheel and clutch. Now take note that there are dowels here, 1, 2, and 3. And just make sure you check on your pressure plate that there is a dowel hole ready to be associated with that. The dowels do fit into place. You just have to have it clocked to the right position. And it seems that there's only one position that will fit this orientation. So make sure you have your dowels lined up. All right. Now, all of these pressure plate bolts also have Loctite on them. My kit did not come with hardware, so I'm going to reuse the 8.8 that was on it already, and fingers crossed it doesn't explode. All right. And now to go see what the manual says about this torque. It looks like the torque on these pressure plate bolts is about 22. So let's start a little low. I'll start at like 10. And we'll do these on a crisscross pattern. I should probably have a smaller torque wrench for something like this. And this also takes a while because we got to get the bolts snugged down. So let me do that and then I'll come back. I've gone around and hand snugged these all down. Didn't put much pressure on them. You got to put enough just so that the pressure plate itself will seat down, because that is sprung. So what you're doing is you're pushing that spring in. All right, for real, let's torque these things down. I'm doing the trick I did last time. Since I'm a long and beefy boy, I have my wrench up on the crank pulley up front. We have this currently set at 10 foot-pound. Lock that in. There we go. I'm pretty sure I've hit 10 there already. Like, this thing is not clicking. I have to back that off and try it again. This would be a good time to have a friend. Oh yeah, that's super light. I'm going way too far. Might as well take this to 20 and see where we're at. I was just thinking that 10 foot-pound should not be turning this crank over. Yeah, let me back these off and do it again. There it is. And make sure that is set to 20. Let me turn that up to like 22, just for good measure. Hopefully that doesn't make too much of a difference as I lose my front wrench again. Be very gentle. There we go. And for good measure, let's take it one more round. There we go. Now just boop. Stand back and observe. Yeah. Hopefully that does all right. You see that the starter's going to be a pain in the ass to get back in, but yeah. Neat. So there you go, clutch installation. Only took about 20 tries. We're here on the inside of the bell housing of the transmission. We'll have to replace this throwout bearing, as well as, whoop, there's a boot here. This is all decayed and crappy. And I'm guessing that's where rodents were getting in here and storing their nuts. So let's start by pulling this thing apart. See if I can remember how to do this and not drop it on myself. All right. There we go. I It comes out, and we'll have to press this out or bash it out. I'm pretty good at bashing stuff. And this spring here, retention spring. Let's see which way to pop it off. There we go. Save that. And then we're going to go ahead and find a socket, put it on the inside here. And we'll put some wood blocks onto the sides. Then we should be able to pound it straight down and knock that carrier out. All right, so here's our setup. We have it set between two planks of wood here so I can drop down below. If you have a hydraulic press, this is a lot nicer, but this is the caveman way of doing it. And then I'm gonna make a little landing nest out of paper and a box underneath, so it falls into something a little soft, if we're lucky. All right, I happen to have a 32 millimeter socket, I think. Does it really matter? Probably not. Yeah, 32, it's just covered. And it happens to fit perfectly on this inside. And I'll bring the camera around here once I have it situated. There we go. As we can see, we're on the inside there, which that will spin. So you see the inside piece that's turning, you want to be on that. All right. Now let's see if I can manage not to mess this up or, drop my transmission. Find my big hammer, my BFH, one of my second favorite tools. Thumb destroyer. Let's turn that around. Sits to the inside. Maybe that'll work a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. And just like that, we have our carrier. And there's the old throwout bearing. I can go in the garbage. Let me clean this thing up and we'll get the new one out and ready. All right, so just the opposite now. We have our new bearing, and you want that beveled edge to the outside. Flats go to the back. Set it over and just try to get it fit flat a little. I'm gonna just press it by hand, trying to just get it on just a little bit. All right, we're gonna try something a little less barbaric. I forgot I had a bench vise. So snug this thing down to the table. I put some cardboard here so I'm not marring up the back edges as I press it in. And I just slowly rotate. We get a nice even press. And I'm not just banging the hell out of it with the mallet. And right there, we are seated down. I'd back that off a little. There we have our new bearing. Cool. Let's go ahead and get this clutch fork out and we can replace the boot. Grab it from the inside. Right out. Pretty gross in there. Make sure I don't lose the spring. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. There's all sorts of junk in there. We'll put some fresh grease in. Set that aside. Pivot ball looks to be in good condition. It's all in one shape. I'll clean that off, put some fresh grease on it as well. All right, let's try to get this boot off. Get some pliers here. This thing is hard as a rock. I might be able to just hit it with a hammer and watch it explode. Oh yeah, it just crumbles. All right, so cleaned up the ball joint of the pivot ball, vacuumed it all out because there was more seeds. I still see more in there. Vacuum those again. Cleaned up our fork, and we will go over and grease some of those points as well, because we'll need those at the tip of the fork where you can see that shine, as well as the pivot point. And right there as well. Oop, there's the pivot point, and that's the actuation point on the outside. We'll get those all greased up. Here is the OEM Nissan boot. Yes, directly from Nissan. I paid way too much for this little piece of rubber. Before we get these all greased up, I just want to show everybody. So there is where the pivot ball will be. Make sure your bracket is set in correctly. There are tabs where this retaining spring or clip go in. Thread it through. I'll show it right here. Lay it down, give it a little squeeze. There we go. And then whenever we go to put that on, it will go over the edge of this pivot ball and keep it down. And I am just using all-purpose grease. It seems to do the job. Some on that ball. I'm going to pack a little bit here inside the arm. All right. Now on the tip of the fork, I'm going to put a little bit more grease on these 2 points. Not too much. We don't need this coming off and getting all over our clutch. Just enough to keep it lubricated. Back it up here just a little. So the boot, it threads through, pushes through the inside pretty easily from the inside to the outside. Make sure it lines up with how your fork is. There we go. Now let's run that vacuum one more time. All right, before we install this transmission again, some of these sensors have lost the leads on their wires, so I'm going to try to clean these up and get them soldered back on. That way everything's functional. That should help it clean up a little bit. All right. Seal them back up, and hopefully there's not too much tension on these. And this one here was pretty good condition, actually. Before we put this transmission back in the car, I wanted to make sure that I could at least get the fill bung off, which it took a little bit of effort. Kind of wish I was recording for that, but I used this boxed end of a 17mm wrench, my cheater bar, which is my jack lever, and a lot of heat. I torched this thing for about 3-4 minutes. And that seemed to help it out because prior it was just not budging. So lots of heat, get some good grip on it and some leverage, and hopefully it will come undone. Otherwise, you got to get a little more creative. All right, I think it's time to put this thing back in the car. I can get this on top of me. There we go. And I'm glad I decided not to put fluid in this first. All right, transmission's back in. That was the worst. Kind of hate my life right now, and I kind of hate working on cars. But it's back in, and maybe once I get driving this thing, I'll forget all about that pain, and I can enjoy this thing. Another day. Let's get these bolts tightened up. I just kind of left it hanging. I was so tired once I got this in. I just kind of wanted to give up on cars at the time. But yeah, it's here. I've cooled down. Let's get this tightened up. This shit rains down on me. Good and snug. Take 3 on the drive shaft. We start at the front. Install the yoke into the end of the transmission. We're gonna move to the back, and we'll try to get like a nut on this. Now these do have little flat edges on them. I don't know if I can see that in the camera, but those do line up with the flats of this back flange. Helps lock them in place. There we go. And follow that up with the lock washer and a nut. All right, so that gets one in. Just trying to hold it there for now. And then we'll get our carrier bearing in place. There we go. I can thread a nut on. That's where I've done it before. There we go. Drive shaft's back in place. I'm going to go ahead, Loctite the 4 bolts back here. You can kind of see up there on the drive shaft flange. I'm going to go ahead and pull the nut off the back. Get some Loctite on all of those and get them torqued down. Drive shaft is all bolted in, tightened up. Transmission mount's good. We have all of our bolts in our transmission. Let's go ahead and get all of these sensors plugged back in, as well as the speedo cable. Try to line that tab up with the slot. There we go. Put a wrench on there just to make sure that's good and snug. There we go, get a little bit more. And with that, we have our transmission and clutch installed. Stay tuned for another episode where I cry and complain about bleeding the brake and clutch system. Thanks for watching.